On the afternoon of September 27, 2020, an emergency call shattered the tranquility in Maryland. There's a woman running to my house asking for help. She says she was attacked by her husband. When police arrived at the scene, they found Ashley Benefield sobbing, holding a gun, while her husband, Douglas Benefield, lay unconscious with 2 bullet wounds in his leg and chest. But behind this shooting was not a simple story of self-defense. It was the tragic end of a marriage that began like a fairy tale, but turned into a nightmare, where the line between victim and perpetrator blurred to the point of indistinction. In 2016, at a Republican Party fundraising event in Palm Beach, Florida, 2 vastly different worlds collided. Ashley, 24 years old, was an ambitious young woman working for Donald Trump's election campaign. Her tasks included mobilizing evangelical voters and organizing rallies in support of the campaign. With the beauty of a model and a dream of becoming a renowned ballerina, Ashley exuded a special charm. Douglas Benefield, 30 years Ashley's senior, hailed from Charleston with an impressive background. He was a former Navy pilot, a technology and defense consultant, and a successful real estate and restaurant entrepreneur. However, Douglas also carried the pain of loss, as his previous wife, Renee, had passed away from an undiagnosed heart condition just a year earlier, leaving him to raise their 15-year-old daughter, Eva, alone. When Ashley and Douglas met, they were immediately drawn to each other, a connection that can be understood through their psychological and emotional needs. For Ashley, Douglas represented stability, success, and protection, qualities a young woman with big dreams craved. He not only had financial security, but also the life experience and ability to turn dreams into reality. For Douglas, Ashley was a breath of fresh air in a life marked by loss. After losing his wife, Douglas may have felt lonely and aged. Ashley, with her youth, beauty, and vibrant energy, rekindled a sense of vitality in him. Moreover, Ashley's dream of ballet may have triggered Douglas's savior instinct, a desire to become a patron of her talent and ambitions. Surprisingly, just 13 days after meeting, Ashley and Douglas decided to marry. This decision shocked not only their family and friends, but also raised questions about their psychological motivations. The wedding was held modestly in Charleston, with only one witness, Douglas's friend, Pastor Trip Cormany. This whirlwind marriage can be explained through various psychological factors. Douglas, with his deep religious background, may have wanted to marry before becoming intimate. For Ashley, marrying a successful older man might have been the fastest way to achieve her dreams and financial stability. However, this rushed marriage also exposed warning signs of a lack of mutual understanding and possibly less than sincere motives on both sides. The reaction of family members, particularly Eva, Douglas's 15-year-old daughter, was entirely understandable from a developmental psychology perspective. Eva had experienced the trauma of losing her mother just 9 months earlier, and now faced her father marrying a woman only 9 years older than her. This was an extremely difficult situation for a teenager navigating identity formation and emotional stability. For Ashley, at 24, she was unprepared for the role of stepmother to a child less than a decade younger than her. This small age gap created an unhealthy dynamic, where Ashley might have felt compelled to compete with Eva for Douglas's attention and affection. when Ashley moved into Douglas's home in Charleston. Conflicts quickly erupted. The relationship between Ashley and Eva became tense from the very beginning. Eva, still grieving her mother's loss, could not accept Ashley's presence in the home that once belonged to her mother. Ashley, as a young woman with no parenting experience, struggled to handle this complex situation. Instead of empathizing with Eva, she may have felt threatened by the close father-daughter bond between Douglas and Eva. This led to frequent arguments, not only between Ashley and Eva, but also severely impacting the previously strong father-daughter relationship. Douglas, caught between his new wife and his daughter, faced an impossible situation. His choice to side with Ashley in many conflicts created a rift with Eva, which she might have perceived as a second betrayal after her mother's death. Douglas was always ready to support and follow Ashley's wishes. Ashley had grand dreams of becoming a renowned ballerina and founding an ethnically and physically diverse ballet company. Douglas, either out of passionate love or a desire for control, promised to support this dream. He continually idolized Ashley, arranging romantic dates and giving her flowers regularly. This behavior from Douglas may reflect an unhealthy form of love, where he idealized Ashley rather than loving her for who she truly was. This could be a sign that Douglas was using Ashley to fill the emotional void left by his late wife. Combining Ashley's passion for ballet and Douglas's business expertise, they founded the American National Ballet in Charleston. The ambitious plan included recruiting dancers from across the country, aiming to operate as both a non-profit organization and a profitable school. However, this project soon became a source of numerous problems. In the summer of 2017, when Ashley became pregnant, the situation grew more complicated. Her severe pregnancy condition prevented her from participating in auditions, forcing Douglas to take on the primary role in running the company. He hired coach Michael Wise and tried to keep the company afloat with about 40 dancers who had come to Charleston. However, family tensions began to affect Douglas's demeanor. A notable incident occurred when he lost his temper and fired a gun into the ceiling during an argument with Ashley about Eva. This was entirely out of character for Douglas, who was described as calm and non-confrontational. This act may reflect the immense stress and pressure he was under. At the end of August 2017, Ashley decided to return to Florida to stay with her mother due to her difficult pregnancy. Douglas continued trying to sustain the ballet company, but without Ashley, the face and vision of the project. Things began to deteriorate rapidly. On October 23, 2017, Douglas made the painful decision to fire the entire group of dancers after requiring them to sign non-disclosure agreements. This decision likely stemmed from severe financial issues or internal conflicts he could not resolve. This mass firing was not only a financial disaster, but also a significant blow to Douglas's self-esteem and reputation. A man who had succeeded in multiple fields, from the military to business, now faced a public failure in a project he had invested not only money, but also his heart in. This likely had a profound impact on his psyche and behavior thereafter. Ashley reacted strongly to this decision. She publicly criticized the company and Douglas on social media, claiming the new management had destroyed the original vision of treating dancers well. This reaction suggests Ashley may not have fully understood the practical difficulties Douglas faced, or she had begun to view him as an enemy rather than a partner. Ashley's public criticism of Douglas on social media also revealed a significant aspect of her personality. Instead of resolving conflicts within the family, she chose to air the issues publicly, possibly with the intent to harm Douglas's reputation. This may have been an early sign of a manipulative and vengeful tendency that would later escalate significantly. The ballet company ultimately collapsed completely a few months later, costing Douglas over $100,000, a significant sum even for someone with his financial stability. He organized a farewell party for the dancers, possibly as a way to alleviate his guilt and sense of failure. This act shows that Douglas maintained dignity and responsibility even in defeat. The collapse of this shared dream created a deep rift in Ashley and Douglas's relationship. For Douglas, it was not only a financial failure but also the end of hopes for a shared future with his wife. For Ashley, this failure may have reinforced her belief that Douglas could not fulfill his promises. When Douglas returned home after the ballet company's failure, he found a 4-page letter from Ashley. In it, she listed his flaws, calling him controlling and obsessive. She specifically mentioned the ceiling shooting incident, stating it made her fear for herself and her unborn child. This letter marked a decisive shift in Ashley's psychology. The language and phrasing in the letter may have been carefully crafted, not only to express emotions, but also to build a legal case for future accusations. Ashley's detailed mention of the shooting incident, which may not have been considered serious at the time, suggests she was beginning to construct a narrative of Douglas as a violent person, instead of seeing Douglas as a protector and supporter. Ashley began to view him as a threat. This could stem from deep disappointment over the failure of her ballet dream, or reflect more complex psychological issues she had long harbored. In late November 2017, when Douglas sent a tea set designed for pregnant women as a birthday gift for Ashley, she accused him of attempting to poison her by lacing the tea with toxins. This was an extremely serious accusation, and marked the beginning of what appeared to be a systematic effort to damage Douglas's reputation and legal standing. The poisoning accusation is particularly concerning due to its irrational nature. Douglas, a man with a deep religious background described as kind and gentle, was suddenly accused of intending to poison his pregnant wife. This irrationality may suggest paranoia or a psychological disorder in Ashley, although investigations by authorities found no evidence of poisoning. Ashley persisted with the accusation. She conducted tests and claimed to have found high levels of metals like aluminum and zinc in her hair. However, the presence of metals in hair can have many causes, from environmental pollution to personal care products, and does not necessarily indicate intentional poisoning. 3 weeks before giving birth, Ashley was admitted to Tampa General Hospital, alleging that her fetus had been exposed to heavy metals due to Douglas's poisoning, along with accusations of physical abuse and confinement. It is unclear whether Ashley's accusations were true, but the hospital protected her by using the alias Christina, indicating the severity of the situation. Ultimately, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. But this event created a significant legal and emotional barrier between Ashley and Douglas after giving birth. Ashley continued to make increasingly serious accusations. She reported to Florida's Child Protective Services that Douglas had abused Eva, citing the ceiling shooting incident as evidence of his violent nature. However, the investigation concluded that Douglas was innocent, and a psychological evaluation found him to be completely normal. Douglas, in desperation, repeatedly sent messages begging Ashley for reconciliation. He still believed in the possibility of rebuilding a perfect family, indicating he may not have realized the severity of the situation or the true nature of the accusations. Ashley wrote a letter warning Douglas not to follow or contact her, threatening to report him to the police if he violated this. This showed she had fully transitioned from a loving wife to an adversarial enemy. However, in the summer of 2018, the situation seemed to take a positive turn. Douglas, desperate to see his daughter, went to court to request visitation rights. Ashley initially sought a restraining order, but Judge Diane Moreland dismissed the poisoning allegations due to lack of evidence. Surprisingly, after Douglas was granted supervised visitation outside the police station, Ashley suddenly became cooperative. She suggested that the three of them spend time together as a family. Douglas, perhaps overjoyed at this opportunity, moved to an apartment near Ashley in Florida. The following year appeared to be happy. They seemed to have found a balance and possibly rebuilt their family relationship. However, this may have been merely the calm before the storm. In August 2019, Douglas discovered Ashley wearing an engagement ring. This shock led him to hire a private investigator, who confirmed that Ashley was dating another man. This may have been the moment Douglas finally realized that all his reconciliation efforts were a game to Ashley. In November 2019, Douglas officially filed for divorce. Ashley once again made accusations of inappropriate behavior toward their daughter, but these were dismissed due to lack of evidence. The situation grew more tense when, in March 2020, Douglas emailed the police, suggesting that Ashley exhibited signs of a dissociative personality disorder. This may have been his final attempt to protect himself and his daughter from what he saw as Ashley's abnormal behavior. Surprisingly, Douglas then announced a shocking decision. He wanted to try rebuilding the family one last time. He agreed to move to Maryland with Ashley, their daughter, and Ashley's mother, Alicia. This may have been the final and fateful decision of his life. On September 27, 2020, Douglas went to Alicia's house to pack for the move. Alicia took Ashley's daughter for a walk, leaving Ashley and Douglas alone in the house. It was at this moment that Ashley informed Douglas she would be moving without him. According to Ashley's testimony, Douglas became furious at this news. He shouted, grabbed her arm, and threatened her by pointing a finger in her face. Douglas reportedly said Ashley could not leave without him. Feeling threatened, Ashley grabbed a gun and fired as Douglas advanced toward her. After shooting Douglas, she ran to a neighbor's house for help. However, when police arrived, they noted several suspicious details. Douglas had been shot twice, once in the leg and once in the chest. Additionally, there were 2 bullets in the wall and 4 shell casings from a .45 caliber handgun near the victim. This indicated more shots were fired than Ashley's account suggested. Douglas was taken to a local hospital, but died after an hour of treatment. Police investigated the scene and interviewed Ashley but did not arrest her immediately. Instead, they conducted a thorough investigation into her claim of self-defense. The decision not to arrest Ashley immediately suggests the police took her self-defense claim seriously and wanted sufficient evidence before acting. This also reflects the complexity of the case and the prior allegations of domestic violence. After 5 weeks of investigation, Ashley was arrested for second-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty and was released on bail after 2 weeks. However, on November 4, 2020, Ashley was arrested again and held without bail pending trial. In February 2023, Ashley's attorney filed a 105-page motion for immunity, claiming her actions were lawful self-defense. The motion included evidence, such as photos of Douglas's physique to demonstrate his physical strength, photos of Ashley's injuries, cuts from a box, a black eye, and allegations that Douglas had abused the family dog, punched walls, and fired a gun. The initial trial saw heated arguments between Assistant Prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell and Rebecca Friel and defense attorney Neil Taylor. Each side vigorously presented evidence to support their position. Judge Stephen White ultimately rejected the immunity motion, stating this was not a case of self-defense, but the result of a long-term effort toward a malicious act. The judge noted that evidence showed Douglas was not facing Ashley directly, was not in a defensive stance, and was unarmed. This raised serious questions about the legitimacy of using lethal force. Court documents revealed that Douglas was visiting his daughter on the fateful day, and an argument about the moving plans led to the tragic shooting. Ashley claimed her actions were self-defense, but physical evidence at the scene significantly contradicted her account. First, the presence of 4 shell casings at the scene indicates Ashley fired more shots than she initially admitted. This raises questions about the nature of the attack, whether it was truly an instinctive self-defense reaction or a deliberate act with intent to cause serious harm. Second, the location and angle of the bullet wounds, based on forensic reports, may not fully align with the scenario Ashley described. If Douglas was advancing toward her in a threatening manner, the wounds should have been in different positions. The fact that Douglas was shot in both the leg and chest suggests a more prolonged confrontation than a simple self-defense reaction. Third, the 2 bullets found in the wall are also a suspicious detail. This could indicate Ashley fired uncontrollably or fired multiple times under different circumstances. The presence of stray bullets also raises questions about the level of danger she posed to others who might have been in the area. Moreover, Ashley's act of running to a neighbor's house for help, while seemingly a natural response, could also be interpreted as an attempt to craft a narrative of being a victim. Her holding the gun while running to the neighbor's house could be seen as unusual if she truly felt she had escaped danger. The Ashley Benefield case raises complex questions about human psychology and the boundary between victim and perpetrator. Was Ashley genuinely afraid? Or did she manipulate the situation to achieve her goals? Did she live in real fear? Or were these delusions stemming from psychological instability? Ashley's act of killing Douglas over a threatening gesture with a finger may suggest paranoia or a psychological disorder. This raises questions about whether she needed a psychological evaluation before the incident. From Douglas's perspective, he may not have recognized the severity of Ashley's psychological state. His decision to attempt reconciliation one last time may have led to his death. This also raises questions about whether he should have recognized the warning signs and stayed away from Ashley. Florida's Stand Your Ground law allows the use of lethal force if a person believes they face imminent danger, without a duty to retreat. This law places the burden on prosecutors to prove the act was not lawful self-defense. However, in Ashley's case, applying this law is complicated by the history of accusations and the nature of the threat. Whether Douglas's finger-pointing threat justified lethal force remains a question for the court to resolve. This case also highlights broader societal issues about domestic violence, psychological manipulation, and how the legal system handles complex cases. It underscores the importance of recognizing signs of psychological disorders and the need for professional intervention. Ashley Benefield is still awaiting trial, and the question of her guilt or innocence remains unresolved. However, this case has left important lessons about the complexity of human relationships and the dangers of ignoring warning signs. Douglas may have seen Ashley as a white swan, pure and beautiful, but in reality, she may have been a black swan with complex and dangerous motives and psychology. This story reminds us that in relationships, especially those that develop too quickly, we must be cautious and attentive to warning signs.